All right, it is time for match lessons from last weekend's USPSA match. And the one I want to show you here, there's a lot going on. This is going to be a long one. So this stage, this is my very first stage, drew from here, a little slip on that bar, and then shot this paper, shot the left paper, and then just chaos in the back there. So I think this ended up taking me like, that's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 rounds. And you see me doing the miss popper dance a bunch. You see what the miss popper dance is when you call a good shot and you go to leave, and then you have to like remount the gun and come back. Now, the reason I was doing the miss popper dance is I was calling a good shot on every single one of those. And eventually I held center, looked at the berm, saw where the bullet splashed, and then held off to hit. And I ended up holding about 3 poppers right from my point of view. It looks like it's splashing like just left, but it's actually splashing quite a bit farther left because the camera is off to the right. So as soon as I left that position, I knew I was super hosed. My assumption was that my dot was either broken or had come loose. I shot those, and I actually looked at the paper as I was leaving, and I shot 2 delta on the left edge of that paper, and I said, that's super not good, and shot the rest of this stage basically holding like the far right edge of everything. Now, what had happened was my comp, I'm shooting lead bullets that are like coated bullets, but they gum up the comp really bad. And I'm also shooting tight group, which is a not good powder for this kind of thing, but it's what I have a lot of. And this is how much lead came out of that comp. And so that is a 135 grain bullet next to the lead. So I didn't weigh it because I didn't want to like mess up my scale and get a bunch of lead on it, but I'm guessing I had like 90 grains of lead in there at least. It was a mess. It took a long time to clean it up. Now, what had happened was there was so much lead in there that you could actually see lands and grooves from the bullet. So when the bullet goes down the barrel, it's spinning down, it's going through the lands and grooves, and when it leaves, it has all those striations in the bullet, and it remade those striations in the lead that was built up. So it looked like my comp was, you know, a barrel, essentially. It wasn't smooth, it had grooves in it. So you could see that my bullet was not only touching the lead on the way out, but just traveling through it. So that caused all kinds of problems downrange, and it was pretty catastrophically bad. So at that point, I'm 1 stage in. This ended up being like a 56% stage, I think it was. I mean, it was just complete disaster on a pretty big course of fire, so I lost like 50 points. And so I had a couple options. Option 1, just shoot my gun and miss a bunch. That doesn't sound like a lot of fun. Option 2, pack up and leave. Also didn't sound like a lot of fun. Option 3, borrow guns from people and finish the match, which is exactly what I ended up doing. I don't have a backup 2011. I only have the one, so I generally don't bring backups to a match unless it's like a major. Then I'll bring a CZ or something. And so I ended up borrowing, let's see, I borrowed an Atlas on 1 stage. That was super nice. I borrowed a Voodoo on a few stages. That was also very nice. I did shoot my own gun on the classifier because the classifier was so close that it basically didn't matter, and I shot all A's on it anyways. But this is the first stage that I shot after that stage with a borrowed gun. And I want you to watch what I'm doing here. I'm kind of moving aggressively, but I'm shooting a little bit timid. And I wouldn't say that I was actually shooting timid. What I was doing was I was aiming very hard. So because the borrowed gun that I had was going to recoil different, it was going to track different, my index wasn't going to be exactly the same because the shape of the grip is a little bit different than mine. Everything was going to be different. So what that meant is I had to pay attention to the dot and use a higher level of confirmation than I normally would. So here is the first stage that I shot with the borrowed gun. So this one is the Voodoo. And not terrible. So what I did in order to continue to shoot reasonably well was essentially overconfirm everything. So I knew that I wasn't going to have any like blazing fast scores. I don't think I had any stage wins. I had a stage win for pistol on the classifier, but that doesn't really count. And then I think everything else is like low 90s, high 80s finishes. And I ended up being 4th overall in the match. And I was pretty surprised about that, actually. But the gist is when you end up doing a bunch of shooting with a gun that you're not used to, even if it is technically the same type of gun. So I switched from a 2011 to another 2011. They all shoot a little bit different, and you're not going to be able to do things as aggressively as you normally would when you're on to either your backup gun or a borrowed gun or something else, but that doesn't mean that you can't shoot at a reasonably high level. So initially it had occurred to me to just try a bunch of different guns and have a bunch of fun at this match. I even flirted with the idea of shooting a guy's revolver, but we didn't have enough belts and stuff to go around. Had I done that, I might have shot things a little bit differently, but on the second stage here and then through the rest of the match, I was like, well, you know, I have a 56% stage, but I'm not necessarily out of this yet. Let's still shoot like I know what I'm doing and just see what happens. And it, you know, turned into a fourth. So the morals here, for God's sakes, guys, if you're shooting lead-coated bullets like I was, clean your comp very regularly. I'm pretty good about this on the PCC. I don't know why I got so lazy with it on the pistol, but now I know roughly how many rounds I can shoot before I really start having problems and what it'll start to look like. And number two is if you're going to borrow somebody else's gun, just over-confirm a bit until that gun starts to feel like home, and then you can go hammer down and shoot a little bit faster.